The sunlit streets of Willow Creek had always given the illusion of pieced, neatly trimmed hedges, pastel-colored homes, and manicured lawns. But beneath that surface lived an unspoken tension, and its epicenter was the HOA president, Karen Whitmore. With her clipboard in hand and sunglasses perched like a crown of authority, she patrolled the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. Her rules were arbitrary, her tone condescending, and her punishment swift. When Marcus Fletcher moved into his modest two-story home at the end of Maple Lane, he was blissfully unaware of the power Karen wielded. A combat veteran and newly transitioned. Its specialist, Marcus was drawn to Willow Creek for its promise of quiet and stability. He spent his first week planting sunflowers in his front yard, bright, golden, and a nod to his late mother's favorite flower. That's when the first letter came, a violation notice. $1,000 fine for unauthorized flora. It claimed sunflowers were not on the HOA's approved plant list, a document Marcus hadn't even seen. Confused but calm, he reached out to Karen for clarification. She responded with a short email, curtly stating, "Read your handbook. Rules are rules. Payment due in 14 days. No discussion." No flexibility. Marcus began to sense a pattern. His neighbors quietly warned him, usually when Karen was out of earshot. "She fined me $500 for wind chimes," one whispered. "She banned Halloween decorations," said another. Karen's rule wasn't about order, it was about control. And Marcus had challenged that. Within days, more notices followed. One for failure to trim hedges evenly, another for unauthorized exterior paint hue, even though he hadn't touched the paint. Then came the photos taken through his fence, clearly from within his property line. That's when Marcus realized Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was harassing him. He filed a formal complaint to the HOA board, but they offered only vague apologies. "We'll look into it," they said, their eyes betraying fear. Karen had run the board for nearly a decade, and no one dared to confront her. Then came the threat of legal action. A letter on official-looking stationery claimed Marcus had breached multiple HOA bylaws and would face court proceedings. But something about it felt off. The font, the language, even the signature. Marcus had seen enough legal documents to know when something didn't add up. And he was about to find out just how deep Karen's power trip went. Marcus sat at his dining table, the alleged court notice spread before him like a puzzle with missing pieces. The seal looked slightly smudged, the formatting inconsistent with official documents he'd handled in his years as a paralegal. The supposed case number at the top didn't match the usual structure used in the county's filing system. His instincts screamed that something wasn't right. He logged onto the county court's online database and began searching for the case number. Nothing. No records, no filings, just blank results. Digging deeper, he entered his name, the HOAS name, and even Karen's, but still no trace of any active case. Either the case hadn't been filed yet, or it didn't exist. Then came the most glaring red flag. The judge's name on the document belonged to someone who had retired over 2 years ago. With suspicion growing into certainty, Marcus began a careful audit of the paperwork. He printed side-by-side comparisons of legitimate court documents and the ones Karen had handed over. The differences were subtle to the untrained eye, but obvious to him: mismatched headers, incorrect margin spacing, and forged clerk signatures. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Determined to build a strong case, Marcus documented everything. He photographed the forged papers, wrote a detailed summary, and began reaching out to authorities. He first contacted the county clerk's office, where a senior clerk confirmed that no such case had ever been filed. "This is serious," she said. "If someone forged this, it's a criminal matter." She advised him to bring it to the court's attention immediately. Not wanting to tip Karen off too soon, Marcus also contacted a local investigative journalist known for exposing HOA corruption. She was intrigued, having heard whispers about Willow Creek's tyrannical president before. They arranged a quiet meeting at a local cafe, and Marcus handed over copies of the forged papers. She promised to dig deeper and follow up with former residents who had clashed with Karen. Meanwhile, Karen continued acting as if nothing was wrong, still strutting through the neighborhood with her trademark superiority. But Marcus knew her. Days of unchecked power were numbered. The web she had spun was starting to unravel, and he had the thread in his hands. What she didn't know was that the next time she walked into a courtroom, it wouldn't be as the accuser, but the accused. The morning of the court hearing arrived with a humid stillness that settled over Willow Creek like a storm waiting to break. Marcus stood outside the courthouse in a crisp button-down, holding a neatly organized folder of evidence. He wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was exposing a system of deceit that had festered under Karen's control for years. He took a deep breath, adjusted his tie, and walked inside. Karen arrived 15 minutes late, wearing an over-the-top white blazer and oversized sunglasses, radiating smug confidence. She sauntered in with her usual air of entitlement, clutching a leather-bound binder and greeting the court clerk like an old friend. When her name was called, she stepped into the courtroom with a smirk, expecting yet another easy win. But today, things would be different. The judge, a stern-faced woman with decades of courtroom experience, began by asking Karen to summarize her claims against Marcus. Karen launched into her usual scripted monologue violations of HOA rules: disrespectful conduct, refusal to comply. She presented the legal documents she had fabricated and placed them on the bench with a practiced smile. The judge glanced at the papers, then turned to Marcus. With steady hands, Marcus stood and spoke. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I respectfully ask the court to review these documents closely. I believe they are fraudulent and have provided a detailed analysis of why." The judge's expression shifted subtly. She motioned for the clerk to bring the documents forward. For the next 10 minutes, the courtroom was silent except for the turning of pages and the clicking of a keyboard as the court clerk verified details online. Karen's smirk began to falter. "This case number doesn't exist," the judge finally said, her voice sharp. "And the listed judge retired 2 years ago." Karen's face paled. "It must be a clerical mix-up," she said quickly. "There was a mistake at the HOA office. The judge held up her hand. "Do not insult this court, Ms. Whitmore. You submitted falsified court documents. That is a felony." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The judge turned to the bailiff. "Take her into custody. Charges of fraud and obstruction of justice will be filed immediately." As Karen was handcuffed in stunned silence, Marcus watched the woman who had terrorized the neighborhood be brought to justice. The storm had broken. The courtroom buzzed with quiet shock as Karen was led away in handcuffs, her perfectly styled hair beginning to frizz with sweat and panic. Her once proud posture had crumbled, replaced with the slouched, defeated shuffle of someone who realized they were no longer in control. The judge wasted no time in concluding the hearing, dismissing the forged case against Marcus and recommending that the district attorney investigate the full scope of Karen's misconduct. Outside the courtroom, a small crowd of Willow Creek residents had gathered after hearing whispers of the drama. Some stood stunned. Others whispered in disbelief. For years, Karen had loomed over the community like an immovable statue of authority, untouchable and unquestioned. But now, her fall from power had been swift and absolute. And the following days, the fallout was seismic. The local news picked up the story thanks to the journalist Marcus had quietly tipped off. Her report painted a vivid picture of an HOA president who had operated like a dictator, abusing her position to harass residents, issue unjust fines, and ultimately forge legal documents in an attempt to silence dissent. Former homeowners came forward with their own stories, accounts of retaliatory citations, unauthorized home inspections, and threats of foreclosure. A class action lawsuit began to form. The rest of the HOA board, previously too scared or apathetic to act, resigned one by one under public pressure. A special emergency meeting was called to begin restructuring the HOA, and to no one's surprise, Marcus was nominated to help oversee the reform. He hesitated at first. He hadn't moved to Willow Creek to get involved in neighborhood politics, but after seeing how easily power had been abused, he knew someone had to do it right. As the weeks passed, the neighborhood slowly began to heal. Rules were rewritten to be fair and transparent. Homeowners were invited to vote on changes and actually heard for the first time in years. The air felt lighter. Children played in front yards again, wind chimes returned to porches, and holiday decorations began to appear without fear of reprisal. Karen, meanwhile, faced a slew of charges: fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice. Her bail was denied. The court made it clear she had used her authority to manipulate and intimidate others for too long. Marcus never asked to be the neighborhood's hero, but as he walked his dog past blooming sunflowers in his front yard unchallenged and unbothered, he knew the fight had been worth it.